Travelers. I'm Josh.
And I'm Kahi.
And we're the Genshin guys. Welcome all. This podcast is for fans of Genshin Impact, the mobile game made by Hoyoverse, also known as MiHoYo. Here we talk about our opinions, experiences, and dreams about Genshin Impact. If you like our show, don't forget to subscribe on Apple Music, Spotify, or wherever you're listening to the podcast. Today we're doing our second Interlude episode. This week I'm moving to Vancouver, Canada, so we won't be able to bring you up-to-date news, our usual Our Weeks in Genshin segment, or the answers to our current community question. In terms of community question, though, you'll have more time to answer, so hopefully it will be a more lively discussion. As always, you can still reach out to us and follow us on our joint account on Twitter at GenshinGuysPod, or our new Discord server, or our individual accounts, which will be in the description. We appreciate you all, and we hope you enjoy the episode. So, before we get started, Kahi, how are you doing today?
Very, very well rested. I would say I got at least 12 hours of sleep.
Oh my gosh.
It's great. Just in this lovely weather, it's nice and cool and chill, nice breeze, and I can just stay under that soft blanket for like ever. But of course, eventually I got up to eat something. But, after 5 days in a row and then finally getting an actually good amount of rest is just awesome. And I also got to catch up on some anime as well. So, pretty much finding like any kind of downtime before I head back to work. But how are you, Josh? How's the move preparations?
Well, let me tell you, Kahi, it's terrible. It's very, it's very, very hectic. Like, a lot of factors cause us to move quite suddenly. Like, we didn't have enough time to plan how to get rid of most of our stuff, and I'm running around dealing with Japanese paperwork, and so it's pretty stressful. But there's exactly from the time of this recording 1 week before I leave for Canada, so I think we will make it on time. There's some things I'm worried about, but I do have friends that live here, so I'm sure I'll be fine. But I just can't wait to already just have moved, be over there, and start my new life getting set up. So that's mostly what's been on my mind this past week. Fortunately, I don't have to work anymore for now, and just hearing you talk about like 5 days working in a row is just like that stresses me out.
I don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, we'll see what happens, and like everybody get some rest. I think that's a really important point to make. Let's all get some rest and not overwork ourselves, no matter what it is that we're working on, and take care of yourself. So, okay. So yeah, that's how we've been. That's how we are today, and I kind of threw it in there, but to everyone listening to this episode, we do now have a Discord server up. So if you're interested in talking to us sometimes, talking about Genshin with other members of the community, as well as answering our community question on a Discord channel, which might be easier for some of you since maybe you don't use Spotify, or maybe you don't use Spotify. So if you're interested in joining the Discord channel, feel free to check out the description in the link, or check out my Twitch channel, which also has the link to the Discord at twitch.tv/jside. So thank you everybody for joining us today on this episode. We're going to be talking about a topic that I feel like needs to be talked about more in Genshin, in the Genshin community. And that topic is Hangouts. So we're going to be talking about Hangouts today. We've talked about it a couple times on the podcast about doing Hangouts as a main feature of some of our episodes. And in this case, for this Interlude episode, we are going to do Hangouts. So first thing I want to mention is, for those of you that don't know, maybe you came into the game late, maybe you've never found the feature, but maybe you're just starting. What are Hangouts? So Hangouts are special story quests that can be replayed and have multiple endings. This feature wasn't actually originally available in the beginning. It came after the 1.4 update, where they added Hangouts for Barbara, Noelle, Chungyun, and Bennett. And after you unlock Hangouts, depends on unlocking a Hangout depends on how far you are along in the story. But Hangouts are in the story quest screen, and you can check out the Hangout events page, which I think you have to press, like there's a tab at the top. And you need the story keys. So story keys you can get by doing daily commissions, and you have a hold up to a maximum of 3 of them and each Hangout event requires 2 story keys to unlock. So Hangouts are actually really interesting. They're a little bit different from the main story in that they're kind of like a visual novel-esque story, choice-driven story quest. So the choices that you make determines what kind of ending you make, and most of them have about, I think most, if not all, Hangouts have 5 endings. So there's quite some story there to learn about each of the characters, etc., etc. And there's also a feature in Hangout events that have a heartbeat value where your choices affect how much your character is vibing with you, kind of like your character likes
It's a
you.
dating sim.
It's the
For those of
dating
you who are
sim
trying to grasp
aspect.
this concept, yes,
But
it's a dating sim.
not all of the Hangouts use this feature. It's always there, but some of the value that sometimes that value can increase or decrease depending on the traveler's responses, and you can fail if the meter becomes empty. So something to keep in mind. And just so that you know, since there's 5 endings, it would be really time consuming to play through the whole thing 5 different times or more. So there is actually a really easy to use checkpoints and decision branch system that has a map of how each ending happens and which choices you made previously so that you can go back to that checkpoint and make the other choice. It also tells you with like a visual check mark that shows which option you've selected before. So Hangouts usually take about 1 to 2 hours on average if for all the endings if you fully listen to the voice lines. So I did a couple of them last night, and it took me about an hour ish each, and I listened to half of the voice lines, and the other half I just kind of skipped through like some of the NPCs talking. But yeah, so it's not that long to do. And as far as Hangout benefits goes, you get to find out more about the characters, including NPCs, with little to no screen time in the main Archon quest, right? That's pretty cool. There's, of course, free gems, and you can even get Heroes Wits, the experience books, as well as Adventure XP, and the character's talent upgrade and their specialty dish and essential materials and stuff like that. If you do all the endings, and you can also get some achievements as well. So a lot of free gems there, and there a lot of different parts of the conversation build on the world, right? World building, the lore. It's really interesting to hear about some of the backgrounds of some of these characters, but also how it pertains to the world around them, which we'll talk about in a little bit, maybe. And my personal favorite thing about having Hangouts is that they are fully voice acted. So you get to hear the
Which is
characters.
impressive
It's pretty
for a side
impressive. Even
quest.
the NPCs and everything. It's like a side quest, but it is a story event, right? Like it is a something that has had specific care thought put into it as far as decision making and the emotions that happen about the character's background, about their interaction with the traveler. So I'm really, really glad it's voice acted because it would feel like a huge missed opportunity if it was not voice acted. So I really, really loved hearing some of these voice lines from some of the characters that I don't get to hear that often, other than for example, their battle voice lines and what little parts that they played in the main story. So great. So Hangouts, right? Who has Hangouts? So as of right now, there are about 13 Hangouts, and those characters are Barbara, Beidou, Bennett, Chongyun, Deona, Goro, Kuki Shinobu, Ningguang, Noel, Sayu, Heizo, Toma, and Yunjin. And all of them have only one Hangout chapter, except for Noel, who has 2. And the only way to unlock her second chapter is by finishing all the endings of the first one. So, when will we get a second chapter for some characters in the future? We don't know yet, but for now, we do have quite a few of these Hangouts. Now, they come out pretty far apart. They basically, most of the Hangouts came out almost an entire chapter apart. So maybe it was like almost after we got our first 2 waves of Hangouts, we didn't get Hangouts for like almost a year, I think. So, but then they added a bunch more, like 4 more or 5 more or something. So, and then they added Hazos in 2.8 and Cookies in 2.7. So those are the most recent. So when will we get Hangouts in 3.0, we don't know yet. No, we haven't had any Sumeru hangouts yet. But as of right now, those are the characters that currently have hangouts. And today we're going to be talking about two of them. We're going to be talking about Beidou and Ningguang, which is why this episode is called Beiguang. And that's the the Beidou Ningguang pairing name that a lot of people use in the Genshin community, and their relationship is pretty great. So unfortunately, in their respective hangouts, they don't really talk about each other that much, and there's no interaction between them because it is about you the traveler, and the character. But it was really fun to do these two hangouts, and we're gonna go kind of in depth about these characters' hangouts and what we got to talk about and what we got to see in their stories. Now, because this is story based, this is my warning right now for you. If you have not done these stories and you want to experience them yourself for the first time, then I'm just warning you that there are spoilers. So, because this entire episode is about these hangouts, if you we're not gonna go obviously there's still value even if we talk about it and you listen to it. There's still value in doing the episode by listening, getting to listen to the voice lines and getting to experience walking around and doing the story things yourself. And plus, you of course get the primo gems and the rewards for completing all the endings. But one of the things that we want to highlight is that hangouts are still in the game, and I personally encourage them. It was really fun to do them, especially if you're interested in the story. It's also a nice break from a lot of the running around that you have to do in a lot of world quests. There are some walking around, running around segments, but it's more story centric, and it's mostly a really nice visual novel style where you're talking to the character and they're directly in the middle of your screen and there's text box and they're reacting to the things you say. It's really cool. So definitely recommend you trying it. I actually recommend you doing the hangouts yourself before you listen to this episode so you can get more value out of listening to the episode. But I'll let you decide. Just want to let you know that there are spoilers, and we are going to be doing Beidou's story and Ningguang's story today. So, all right, Kahi, you ready to get started?
Ready?
Okay. So first, let's talk about Kahi's favorite, Beidou.
Hey.
Let's talk about
Okay.
the Captain Beidou's hangout. So Beidou's hangout starts on the Alcor. I think that's the name of her ship, right? So you're on her ship, and she invited you to come celebrate after all the stuff that happened recently in Inazuma or something like that. So they imply that you already finished the Inazuma storyline here. And when you go to her ship and you talk to her, the conversation can go one of two ways. One of the options is, I'm really interested in the life of a sailor. And so from there, you go into sailor training. And there are 3 story endings in this path. And then the other one is having a private chat with Beidou about something that happened off the coast of Inazuma after she dropped you off in Inazuma. What happened directly after that? There's a second path that goes into the last 2 endings. So let's talk about the sailor training ending first. So when you choose the sailor training option, you have 2 choices. One of them is to join Beidou's crew in her group known as the Spear of the Crux. Now, the Crux is the name of Beidou's crew, and the Spear of the Crux is a group of people who specialize in fighting for the ship, as well as driving the boats on the ship, as well as doing negotiations and things, like basically directly interacting with people outside of Beidou's crew, and including enemies, right? And also trade partners, etc., etc. So once you do some boat training, you actually have to get in the boat and do a little obstacle course. Then you go to Liyue Harbor and you take part in sort of a coded secret trade agreement thing. And you go with Beidou through this and you do the whole thing, and then it ends with her explaining to you a little bit about their work, a little bit about how they do trades and how sometimes it's not always legal, and how Ningguang is kind of aware but is also not aware, or like chooses to look the other way because Ningguang knows that what Beidou does is never going to be against Liyue, because of course Beidou is an ally, even though she does like shady stuff, which I thought was super interesting. So this training Spear of the Crux, what did you think of this ending, Kahi? Do you remember this one?
So as far as like going through the um I guess you could say the trade deals, it still helps to kind of give you a mindset of what Beidou does in the background off screen. Because,
Mm-hmm.
she's just not sailing out there. She's actually an active part of, trade routes sailing. I mean, we went to Inazuma on her ship, and she, of course, has ties to Inazuma, and she knows a lot of people there, and they know her. So she's not just pure pirate. She actually does deal with, legal trading as well as illegal. It also adds a little bit of life and a little bit of personality to the characters as well. Knowing that Ningguang is fully aware, which is kind of obvious. Ningguang knows a lot about the city, but knowing that Ningguang is aware of this whole thing, it kind of suggests that she values it in a way, because otherwise she would definitely stop it, or she doesn't see it as a threat. I mean, having a pirate as an ally is a very, very good ally, because when all the legitimate paths have been exhausted, you will then have the illegitimate paths available. So, yeah, Ningguang and Beidou, as far as their relationship goes, is quite professional. It is easy to see that they benefit from each other. Like, if Ningguang gets in trouble, she can call on Beidou. If Beidou gets in trouble, she can call on the other one, because they're kind of on opposite ends of the spectrum. Like, you have
It,
the good guy doing the good way, bad
what's
guy doing the
funny?
kind of bad way.
What's funny
Mm-hmm.
about that is like not only that, of course, that's a huge part of their relationship. But one thing that Beta specifically mentions is that when Ningguang is like that rich eccentric person, right? And so when she
Mm-hmm.
wants like something interesting, Beidou is one of the people who like goes out and gets stuff for her. Like
Pretty much,
like
yeah.
Ningguang wants this kind of specific rock or like this specific thing or or whatever, like needs the specific thing done that's like kind of eccentric in a way. I don't know. That's kind of how she explained it. Uh Beidou is one of the people that Ningguang goes to for that. So I thought that was really funny.
Wait, didn't when they were building the Jade Temple or the Jade Chamber, weren't we partnered with Beto for a little bit, and you
Yeah.
found like the biggest piece?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Beidou helped you out a little bit too.
yeah,
Yeah, I just did
I
that
remember
one
that.
in my US account, so I remember that one. So
The fresh.
because Beidou helps you out, right? And then they what is it? Like everybody gets a question answered by Ningguang after they do that. You
Mm-hmm.
remember that? So like
Information.
Yunjin and Shenhe and Traveler and Beidou, they're technically on a team. And then Yunjin asked about like where should she do her new opera, and Shenhe didn't have a question. And Traveler didn't technically have a question, but Paimon asked, "How do I start a business and make money?" And then
Oh my
she's like, "I mean,
goodness.
I can help you with that, but it's up to you whether or not the business fails." And then Beidou's like, "I don't need any questions answered," or something like that. So yeah, so their relationship is really interesting. So yeah, it was lightly touched on during this part because these transactions that Beidou does are, sometimes on Ningguang's radar, but not enough to actually have Ningguang go and do anything about it. She's like, as long as we stay out of each other's way, kind of thing. Now that was the.
Um,
Oh yeah, what's up?
I remember doing these things a long time ago, and I'm pretty sure back then there was this. It is most likely fixed by now, but there was a glitch where when you're in the story quest, the state of the world kind of freezes. So I remember specifically when I started a hangout, and I guess I failed the quest or I dropped it, and I went to a certain area. I noticed the things that I harvested were still up again, and I could harvest them again. So it does something to the world so that you are progressing through a path. So it unlocks areas that you can go into specifically for that quest. Like, for example, like when you go to Beto's village and stuff like that.
Right, right.
But we'll get to that in a little bit. But it does alter or affect the world to some degree. So if you're in the middle of other quests, I wouldn't be surprised if some of these, I guess, wouldn't work, because they are going to be tied to some other side quests from other characters.
I
So just
see.
just a little heads up if you wanted to start it.
Yeah, I don't know if that's still an issue, but I didn't really check. So yeah, I guess just be in a good place. Not don't be like in the middle of a major story event or something before you start doing a hangout. Maybe it might be kind of weird. I did notice that there were some parts where like I needed to. There were some parts where I needed to change the time of day, but I couldn't. And I don't remember why, but I was like, oh, I can't change the time of day. So I don't know. Well, it is kind of like when you when you activate the Hangout quest, the world kind of reloads for a second. So there's definitely something there. But I don't know. Just be careful. Basically, I guess is what you're trying to say, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. So that was one ending where you do the transaction and you kind of get a glimpse into you kind of get a glimpse into Beidou's duties as a captain. Now, normally, Beidou says normally she's not the one that goes around doing transactions all the time, but her crew members do. So that they speak in this code, and there's a lot of things that her underground partners know, and they kind of just show you that there's that whole network that they have there to where they get information and they do transactions. And that was kind of the whole ending of that first. I mean, it's not the first ending, but that's kind of the ending of that story path. Now, the next path is when you choose, I'm interested in a sailor, and then you join the group. You don't join the Spear of the Crux, but instead you join the Shield of the Crux. And the Shield of the Crux is the support group. The support group does things like maps out the pathings that they go to. They create maps. They have a cartographer. They have a doctor. They have a lookout that tells you where the weather is going from way up high from the crow's nest of the ship. And Beidou basically suggests that you talk to the NPCs on the ship, parts of her members of her crew, and learn more about each of their respective roles from them. And it was really interesting because they tell you a bunch of information, and you kind of have to remember some of them because Beidou then quizzes you afterwards. And the quiz, it looks like it doesn't really matter. It doesn't actually affect the story ending because I didn't finish the quiz with all the answers correct. There's actually 3 questions, and I got 2 of them. And then I went through and I didn't need to do it again to progress. But I think it's just a fun extra thing you can do while you are doing the story quest. So it just shows you some of the things they're experimenting with. I thought that was pretty fun. After that, you say, I want to attend your photography class because they're talking about having a photography class. But then the photographer was out sick or something like that. They couldn't show up. So the traveler goes, hey, I know a little bit about photography. And so the traveler is teaching the class now all of a sudden. And they couldn't decide on a model. So I actually only went through one story path for this. I only chose Beidou. You can choose to recommend 3 other NPCs, but you can also choose to recommend Beidou. So of course I picked Beidou. And all the crew was
I
like,
think
yeah,
they all
Beidou,
wrap
Beidou.
around back to Beto.
I think so too,
I think
because
if you
I was
pick
able
one
to
of
do all
them,
the
they'll be like,
endings.
no, 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 I can't.
Yeah,
Mm.
I was able to do all the endings anyway. So
Yeah.
I picked Beidou, and basically Beta's super embarrassed to be a model for
Of
the
course.
photography. Then someone makes a suggestion. Someone makes a suggestion like, let's go somewhere and then take the picture and then bring the picture back and show it to the crew. And Beta's like, sure. And then you can suggest a location. And because there's only one story path for this, I think I picked the correct one, quote unquote, but I picked that I had heard from one of her crew members, like she was raised in a small fishing village outside of Wangshuin. And so we go to that nameless fishing village because Beto's like, yeah, it's been a while since I've been there. And then you go to the village and you get to talk with Beto about how she grew up kind of like poor. And like she found this village because she was chasing a dog that had a piece of bread, or it stole her bread that she had, and then she chased the
Yeah,
dog all
she
the way
was
to this
adopted.
village. Yeah, she was adopted by the people in the
Yeah,
village, but before that,
because
she
she
didn't really
herself was a
explain.
stray.
Yeah, she didn't explain how she came to be an orphan, but she was an orphan, and she ended up going to this village, and they ended up taking really good care of her. But then, specifically, the village elder was the one taking care of her, like the village chief. And then the village chief passed away, and a bunch of stuff started happening, like their crops started dying out and all this stuff. And so apparently, for whatever reason, she was blamed. There's something about the origin
Yeah,
of her
bad
name.
luck, superstition.
Yeah, there's something
Yeah.
about the origin of her name about how her name is a constellation like in the sky and has an inside one of those inside that constellation, one of those stars is known as a bad omen. And so people were saying that she was bad luck. And so they kicked her out of the village basically, like they shouted at her and yelled at her until she left. And that's why she left. And the village itself like started having all those problems, so people started leaving the village, which is why it's abandoned now. And so she kind of explains that to you. And then you go, oh, and then she actually goes, all right, so let's take that picture. And you're like, oh, I didn't know you still wanted to take the picture. Or you can say, okay, yeah, I thought you forgot about taking the picture. And then this is where the story choices differ, where you choose to take the picture and you say, what kind of pose do you want to do? And then you do like, oh yeah, do an epic pose, or you choose whatever pose. And she does like, she crosses her arms and does like a classic Beidou pose, and then you just take the picture. And then the ending is she takes the picture and she goes, okay, I'm gonna use this for crew recruitment and stuff like that. You can't have this picture back. And the ending picture is like Traveler trying to get the picture back from her. And then there is a different story path where you can choose the other ending, where I'm assuming this is Kahi's favorite ending, where you you suggest to her, how about a sexy pose? And then she gets super flustered and really embarrassed, and then you snap a quick picture anyway. And then it's like a really funny picture of her flustered from that. She's like, "Huh?" And then she like tries to
You
like
can kind of
tackle
see it
you.
too.
Yeah, and she kind of tries to like
Yep.
tackle you and take the picture from you. And so
Yeah.
the ending picture is a sort of picture of Beidou. It's the picture of Beidou flying up into the air while Beto's like tackling you, trying to get the picture away from you. And so it's really, really funny.
Yeah. So for those of you who haven't done this, or maybe you're trying to think of reasons to get this, there's two things. One, the ending of all of these stories end with a picture of you and the character in question.
Oh, right. I forgot to
That
mention that.
picture, yeah, that picture can be saved. It gives you an option to save it. And it's just like when you snap a picture with the actual camera. It goes into your pictures, your screenshots folder, or wherever it captures it in your computer. But what it also does is it saves it within the game. And what I mean by that is that if you go to your Serenity Pot, you can actually build a empty picture frame, the exact same aspect ratio and dimensions. It's just blank, but it's the same dimensions as the picture. And if you put it up on the wall, you can choose one of those story ending pictures to put on the wall.
Oh my God, Kahi, I never knew that. That's so
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah. So like I have like a room where like I have Noel in it, and there's pictures of the Noel hangout in the room, and then you have a room for Beidou, you have a room for Ningguang. Their pictures
You
are
mean a
in the room.
shrine?
It's not a shrine; it's a room. The
what
whole
whatever
thing is
helps
a
you sleep at
shrine.
night. Whatever
The
helps.
mansion itself, the mansion itself is a shrine,
I see.
and there are many shrine maidens.
I see. I see. That's the approach you're taking. I got it. Okay, so yeah, so that's cool. I didn't know that. Yeah, so
Method to the
I forgot to
madness.
mention that at the end of Hangouts. At the end of every story ending Hangout, you get a little picture of you and that character, and so that means there are 5 per character. And I did not know that you could turn it into a picture and put it up in your teapot house. That is really cool. So I will definitely think about that when I'm building my teapot and stuff like that.
Yeah, some of them are nice wallpapers too, especially the one with like Beidou. It's like at night.
Yeah. Okay, we'll get to
Moon is
that
right
one. We'll get to that
above
one. Okay, so
ocean. It's
so
awesome.
oh yeah, that was the first one. That was the strange transaction one where
Mm.
you're going through that story. So what
Yeah,
was
so we
your
got three so
what
far.
was your favorite part of this story ending, Kahi? You were talking about the quiz, and then there's
Honestly,
like the part with the photography and her background. So what did you like about it?
honestly, it's just the origin stories. A lot of these characters, you kind of meet them like midway through their journeys, or like not. You never meet a character at the beginning of like their story either, because there's always like a bunch of stuff that happened before you met them. So now these hangouts, of course, always they're focused around backstory. They're focused on origins. They're focused on personalities, motivations, all that kind of stuff. It flushes out the character a little bit more, which is really helpful for immersion. It's really helpful for world building. You know that hey, this character had like a family in this area, and then wait a second, there's actually some other items in the game that reference people from that area too, and then you find out that all these things are interconnected. Like you learn how people have certain relationships to families here. You have relationships to like NPCs or other characters. It really helps flush out everything else, even though you are reading a lot. Like the voice acting very helps very very much.
So much. Yeah.
So
What did you like
these
about
things are
this
very
ending?
underestimated. Not so much the endings. I mean, of course they're funny,
Right.
they're
I mean this
fun,
story path.
but the story path, I like the origins of Beidou, because she has that wandering spirit, but no, that's because she's pretty much been on her own for a while. She is an orphan. She was adopted into this village that didn't really like her, and then she went off to do her own thing, and Um, Fishing village. She definitely loves fish too. This is actually a pretty interesting a few points about her story, which makes Ningguang make a little bit more sense. But we'll get to Ningguang in a little bit. But it's it's a good establishing story for this character, and it makes you empathize a little bit or sympathize because no one likes hearing a story of, oh, they're an outcast, or they think they're cursed, or they think they're like a bad omen. So
Yeah.
it really helps
It
to
also
draw
shows
a
you
connection with the
how this
character.
character became tough, right?
Mm-hmm. They had to be because dog eat dog world. You had
Yeah.
to fend for yourself. Fishing villages, especially going through droughts and a lot of what do they call droughts and famines. You gotta have you gotta grow some tough skin. So
Right.
you get little bit more respect for this character. I never understood. I want to understand like how certain people like choose their weapon. I don't. I would love to know why Beidou chose a claymore, but I don't think that's ever explained
That's
specifically. A lot of these
interesting.
characters, when I don't know if one of them, I mean, Kazuha was given his sword. Um, who
I
else
mean,
was like they
Ayaka
had
and
like a
Ayato
weapon that
have
was
a
given to them?
background, like their sword
Mm-hmm.
style has
Well, I
its
mean,
own
that's their
background too.
family thing,
Yeah.
swordsmiths. Well, not swordsmiths, but like their sword style,
Right.
the
Same with
Kamisato
Kazuha.
style.
Yeah.
Oh, and Shincho, the Guhua style.
Oh, right.
So they always use, but I like knowing how certain characters. It doesn't look like they would use that weapon, but apparently they use a weapon like Sayu getting a claymore. I don't know why,
Yeah. Why would a ninja
but
use a
apparently
claymore like a tiny
I
ninja?
know.
Yeah. Well, I think
Mhm.
most of those are basically beyond explanation or purely gameplay traits. Yeah. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe we'll find out someday about some of these characters, but maybe some of them it doesn't really play into their character itself, and so they just use a certain weapon. I'm curious. So that's the sailor training story paths that you can take. There's three endings on that side. But then let's rewind back to the beginning. You meet Beidou on her boat, and then instead of saying, "Hey, I want to join you as a sailor," you say, "Hey, the last time I saw you was when you dropped me off at Rito in Inazuma." And then Beidou goes, "Hey, actually about that, we found something on the beach near you when we were leaving. So let me talk to you about that in private." So you have a private chat with her, and she shows you a piece of a map, like a poorly drawn, hard to make out, what looks like a treasure map. And so for this treasure, you can choose to go to two places. When you look at it, she goes, "What do you think? You have experience with treasure with exploring the world. What do you think this looks like?" And you basically tell her it can look like either Chingsa village or Guili Plains. And if we go to Chingsa village, then you go there and there's a little story about how Beidou is really well known there and has always known to help them, and a lot of the villagers look to her to solving their problems, I guess. Like they really respect her decision making and her judgment. So they have a lot of domestic disputes, like this person um this person's been bothering me because of this, and he goes, "Oh, I'm not bothering you. It's this. And so there's a lot of like random little arguments that happen that you and Beidou kind of get to decide what the most peaceful solution or what the solution to the argument is. And after you do about three of those, you find the third one is actually two guys arguing over a treasure chest that they found while plowing land. And so you think this could be the treasure chest. They're fighting about whose treasure chest it is, and Beta goes, "Oh, I'll just take it because you guys are arguing, and like like the only peaceful way slash fair way is like if I just take it," which is like really funny because she also she says later that
It's true.
she feels bad about it in a way, but
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, if one of them won, then one of them would feel cheated in a way or unfair to the other person. So if she takes it, then it's just equal for both of them. So that was her what she says is like her not very well thought out solution, kind of. Like she just said like this was just my way of doing it, which might not be like the most refined or best way or smart way. I didn't hire a lawyer, blah blah blah. I just thought it would be most I just thought it would be most fair. Wait. I just thought it would be most fair if I took the treasure chest. And so yeah, and so the funny thing is like she tells you this when she's super drunk because all the villagers celebrate with her visiting them and for her helping them all the time by throwing her a little party. And so this was actually where I couldn't change the time because I changed. It said like come around this time, and so I changed the time to a certain time. But then it started raining, and I was like, oh man, I don't want it to be raining when I do the next cutscene. So I tried to change the time, and it said you cannot change the time, and I was like, oh no. So I think maybe
Wait,
it
wasn't there
locked
a
me in.
dispute about a tree?
What?
There's a dispute about the guy. Wasn't there a dispute about an old man in a tree?
That's the next one. Oh
Ah,
yo
okay,
yo wait
okay.
wait no 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 you're right. There was a dispute about old man in a tree, but why? Did you want to say something about that?
No, no, I just remember there being another dispute because you had to determine like,
Yeah, there was three of
should
them.
you cut it down, should you not? Yeah.
Yeah, so there was so I mean if you do it you'll know, but three of them. One of them was like this guy started feeding these birds, and so they started hanging around his house, and they started bothering everyone's crops. And he said he claims to not own the birds because they're wild birds, but he kept feeding them, so he caused them to keep coming and to multiply. They started nesting, and around his house is like a nest of birds. And his argument is like, I don't own them, so it's not my problem. They're just wild birds. And she's like, but you, the girl's like, you fed them, so they're here, and so it's your fault. So you owe us money for damages, and so you get to make a decision based on that. And then the other one was this guy's late father planted a tree, and it's been like a bunch of years now, and the tree sprouted, and this old man who used to wake up and he used to enjoy the sun because his house is facing the sun or whatever in the morning, the tree is perfectly blocking his sun, so he can't get he can't start his morning every day the way he wants to, I guess. And so because this guy planted a tree who like it's blocking his view, and it's like right outside his house. And so the son of the late father who planted the tree is saying like it's my late father's like last wish for this tree to grow, and I don't feel right about cutting it down. But there's this whole thing about superstition and whether or not you should cut down the tree. So that was the second one. And the third one was the two guys arguing about the treasure chest. So once you figure that out, they throw you a party, and then during the party, Beidou gets super drunk and is super funny. Oh my god, her voice acting is so good. I really, really love Beidou's voice actress. And I'm listening in Japanese, right? But it is so funny. And
Mm-hmm.
so she's like hanging out with you, and they're having a lot of fun. And then you open the treasure chest, and you find out there's actually just a bunch of rotten radishes. So it was definitely not the treasure you're looking for. And yeah, so then that's what ended up happening.
The voice actress in English, I haven't heard in a while, but I know it's actually really good. But I'm just so used to the one in Japanese. It's just the thing about the this particular one is you also get to see more of her, I guess, negotiation ability, not so much in the uses in the context of trading and just handling a lot of shipments and transportations. It's just she has good negotiation skill, or what's it called, arbitration skills. So it does add to like her commanding or captain presence. So she's not just a captain because brute strength or because of you know some decision. She actually has qualifications now. So it adds more to the hmm, to the character. It gives you more reasons to respect the character. It just flushes it out a little bit more. But the end picture is actually really funny because
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
just
everyone's having a meal, raising a cup in the air. It's great.
it's so good. So yeah, so that's one ending of the treasure chest where you choose the Qingce village, and then the second one is the Guili Plains, and in this place you find a bunch of treasure hoarders at the spot that you go to, and once they realize it's Beidou that's coming there to check stuff out, they get really scared and they try to run away, and Beidou says that they should turn a new leaf and stop being treasure hoarders basically. And so they respect Beidou so much that they say, "Okay, you know what? Do whatever you want. We don't mean to bother you. We're sorry." And they leave. And then we start looking for the treasure. We can't find it. They come back and they say, "You know what? We actually do want to turn a new leaf because a lot of this captain was basically trying to sacrifice himself and saying, "Look, you can just don't hurt them. Just take me. they don't deserve this. They're just trying to make a living. They don't have enough money for food, and so that's why they're treasure hoarders. And Beidou offers them that the crux will give them a job, like hard, like manual labor, basically, of moving stuff and things at the Liyue Harbor. It's honest work, but it's something that will give you money and put a roof over your head, that kind of thing. And so they take her up on the offer, and so then they end up actually helping us look for the treasure chest. And they found a poem that has like hidden meaning for how to find the treasure chest. And once we find the treasure chest, there's like a tree that you go to and all this stuff. And you open up the treasure chest and you find that there was actually a bank statement that was put there by a dying son's last wish, who was apparently, I think, a treasure hoarder or something. He was not like a great person apparently, but he was worried about his mother, and so he put all of the money that he had into this. Has that He made a check that has all the money that he had made out to his mother, and said that if anyone found this letter, which is what Beidou found in Inazuma, that if anyone finds this, please find my check that I buried and bring it to my mother. And so Beidou so we find the chest with the check. Then we find the mom who's living in Guili Plains. She's actually like Inazuman, but she lives there. She's like an old lady. We don't actually see her, but basically Beidou says, "All right, you treasure hoarders, you guys, I have your first job ready for you. Take this check to that lady in there and make sure that she gets everything that she needs." And so they do it, and like while they're talking to the lady, you and Beidou are like behind a rock watching, and it's so cute because like Beidou's like using your head as like like a little like a
She's
little
just leaning
stand.
on your head.
She's just leaning
It's
on your
great.
head. Yeah, I think this is one of my favorite pictures from this event. So yeah, it's really great, and it's like a really nice story because it really shows you the different sides of like the treasure hoarders and stuff. How there are people who are just doing it to make a living because they don't really have anything else, and then when Beidou offers them, like sees the goodness in them or like sees the potential for them to do honest work, then she gives them an out basically of that life. And I think because we know about Beidou's story from like how she grew up and everything, that she also like just all of these different story paths show how caring Beidou is as a captain. Like it makes me think about and it makes me think about stuff I've been reading recently, like in the world, in like on LinkedIn and stuff like that, about leadership and how a kind leader is the best kind of leader in like as many like how can I say this? A lot of leadership now focuses on assertiveness and power and these and like these kind of smarts and things like that. But because of a lot of people pursue that, they tend to forget kindness and being, speaking to the human in other people and being,
Mm-hmm.
like empathetic toward other people's situations. And that's a huge miss in a lot of leadership in today's world. And I think that it's really interesting that while I've been thinking about that recently because I like recently left my job and I'm looking for a new job and all this stuff, that this story with Beidou just shows like how she's in a sense like almost the perfect leader. Like everybody cares about her and respects her, and she doesn't get anything through fear or power or underhandedness. She just listens to people and then helps them, and then that's it. Her whole thing is like just helping people, and it's like so interesting because she's like a pirate captain and all this stuff, and you would think there's like a negative image associated with that, but we also know from the story that she's a really good person and helpful. But now we get to see in depth in her everyday life about how she goes about doing that, why she's so respected. And this is only something we could really do in a hangout, right? Like, and I think that, of course they can make a story quest the way that they do for 5 stars, but it's very linear and it would end up being a really long story quest if you just associated it with all of the if I took all these endings and somehow strung it into one giant story, it would just be a really long story quest. So it would feel like a lot of other things. But I think it's really cool because Hangouts give you the opportunity to make your own decisions, to see where the story's going. It gives you a little bit more ownership, so you feel like, oh, this is the story path I chose. And then you can do that. Oh, but what if I chose this story path? And then it lets you easily switch between them. It doesn't make you replay the whole thing from the beginning every time. So I really, really enjoyed this hangout, and just Beidou, such a great character. So
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so what did you think overall about Beto's Hangout, Kahi?
I mean, because this came out a long time ago, this is definitely one of the biggest reasons why I like Beidou as a character. Her playstyle is great, but then the more you learn about the character herself, great, really great character. Everything makes sense. Nothing just is pulled out of thin air. Like her origins make sense. How she grows from that state to like where she is now. It matches her personality through and through. And yeah, it's a fun little thing that just isn't so grindy. That isn't so fight everything here and just use all your abilities here. It's just super casual. A lot of people, if they have nothing to do in the game, there's always this. Some people put this off for like ever because they feel like, oh, it's too mundane or whatnot. But then they learn a couple of little lore bits here and there, or maybe they didn't like the character and suddenly they like the character. So yeah, it's one of those things that just adds more life to the game. So I like this one,
Yeah, it's
but
cool. It
it
gives you a
also
reason to
get
look at characters you never really
mm,
looked at before, right?
mm. Yeah, but it also, like I think I mentioned this earlier, it also helps to understand the connections between this character and other characters, like how their relationship actually is formed because of the events that happened in the past. So the next character, Ningguang, there's actually a lot of parallels. There's a lot of reasons why Ningguang and Beidou they get along very, very well. So, would you like to introduce what happened during Ningguang's hangout?
Yes. So let's go to Ningguang's story. All right, so Kahi, this time for Ningguang's hangout, let's try something. Let's pretend like we're playing the story almost, and I'll tell you what decisions we can make, and let's make those decisions and see what ending we get. How about that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the Ningguang hangout starts with after you've rebuilt the Jade Chamber, and you get to see a glimpse of Ningguang's everyday life. Obviously, Ningguang is this super super respected, um, should be 5-star character who is
Pretty much.
really busy, and she has a lot of connections to different things in Leeway. And so the beginning is kind of random, where you end up working for Ningguang as an assistant for a day. And so you're supposed to schedule her, you're supposed to set up her schedule for the next day. And so based on what you decide is based on what happens in this story. You're talking to Ningguang's assistant, and she's telling you how that she usually schedules, and it's really really complicated. But you can just choose: do you want to really really try to put time and effort into understanding her schedule and create her legit schedule, or do you want to just do a day off? It was really funny. It's like, okay, here's the schedule. At 10 a.m. we do this and this and this and this, or day off. So those are the two choices. Which one do you want to do, Kahi?
Day off. Everyone likes taking a day off.
Okay, so time off. So you have three different story paths where you can go from here. After you decide it's your day off, you talk to Ningguang for a little bit, and you decide on one of three paths. One is we're gonna go work in the Northland Bank, the Sneznayan run bank that is in Leeway. And you can work there to make some money and some investments and stuff. Or you can let's pretend we are starting from nothing and challenge ourselves to start from zero and to make more from nothing. And the third thing is Ningguang is working on a chess game, her own custom chess game, based on the battle for Liyue Harbor, which you were also a part in. And so she's kind of working on that project. So which of these three do you want to choose?
I think when I did this one, I did the starting from zero because her whole thing is about money. I'm kind of interested in what her tactics would be. So I think one of the things I remember about Ningguang's particular quest is I'm pretty sure I chose the one where you're like starting from the beginning with like Nomura because I wanted to see what her tactics would be or what she, how she would react if we're in a situation without all this wealth because her whole character has always been about prestige and like power and influence. I'm just trying to see what I guess I was more curious about if she has any experience in the opposite spectrum.
Right. So yeah, that's a good one. So okay, let's choose starting from zero. So basically the two of you treat it like a game. And you start from zero, you're not allowed to use your influence or your position as a person. of status, basically Ningguang, and also you're the traveler. You're not allowed to use that to your advantage to make Mora. That's part of the rules. Now, when you go to the first idea that you have is let's go get some of the free, like thrown away, broken down stuff that people are getting rid of. There's like basically like a I don't know how to say it, like a garbage dump slash um recycling area where people throw their stuff, and when they get rid of it they just trash it, or people can buy it, or you can just receive stuff that doesn't have any value. And apparently so they go to the that area of Liyue where in the harbor where you can get these things that people are throwing away. But the guy who's working there recognizes Ningguang, of course, and starts treating her totally different from any other customer, and says like, "Oh yeah, let
Mm-hmm.
me just do everything for you because you're Ningguang." And then there in the end there wasn't really that many options to work with because they had just done a cleanup of all the garbage stuff, of all the forgotten stuff, and you didn't really have any options and nothing was very usable. But at the same time, the guy went out of his way to get this stuff for you because you're Ningguang, even though they had already technically closed it off to everybody. So Ningguang felt this isn't really fair. It's not part of the rules because they were, you know, like giving it to us, but they were like, okay, let's try it. And then so you get
Didn't she decide to leave?
well,
At
so
some point, you have to leave the city.
yeah, so what happens was
Yeah.
you get like some of those garbage like trinkets or whatever. It was like there was a wooden
Mm-hmm.
toy, and she's like, maybe we can salvage this and sell it for something. Let's see how much we can get. So you go to another merchant, and the merchant goes, hey, like he goes like, oh, it's Ningguang, like and she's like, oh yeah, hey, we just want to like sell this thing, and he's like, oh okay, um. I'll give you like 150,000 mora, and she's like,
Because he thinks it's valuable.
yeah, he's no, because we're like, he thought it was like some kind of trick or like some kind of thing, and so, he because she's Ningguang, he made this offer, and she's like, normally this wouldn't be worth like even 1,000 mora, and he said, yeah, and she's like, be honest with me, like, did you just offer that because we are here? And he basically said, yeah, normally I wouldn't take this at all from a normal person, but because you're you, I thought there was something else involved here. And so she goes, yeah, that's what I thought. Like the city, everyone knows us too much. We can't really get anything done here as if we're really starting from zero. So let's leave the city. So you leave the city and you go fight some hilichurls and stuff, and find the treasure chest and find the money that the hilichurls had stole, or you catch a weasel thief. Like there's like a bunch of random stuff that you just do out in the field,
And
and
it wasn't much.
it
Like,
wasn't much. It
even
was
the
a
chest
thousand
didn't have
mora. It
much.
was like 1,000 mora
Yeah, that's it.
total, like from everything you did. And she's like, oh wow, I'm getting kind of hungry, but this isn't even enough to eat at Wangshu Inn. So, what should we do? And so like that's when she kind of explains that she was a fisherman, and so
Aha,
she
the connection.
yeah, and so she started from a very poor family, and she had to fish to survive, and so she said, but this time, I think this was before fishing was actually in the game. So she was like, we're gonna do fishing, but we're gonna use our hands. I think if this
Yeah,
came out
this was
when
before
fishing,
fishing.
yeah, if this came out after fishing, they probably would actually do fishing. So I would love to see Ningguang's story Act 2 have like a fishing competition or something like that. That'd be really cool. So, but anyway, you go catch some fish with your bare hands, and then you go cook it there by the river, and you find out Ningguang is a really good cook. And of course, because she grew up her whole childhood making catching fish and cooking them. So so then the ending picture is you and Ningguang sitting like by the shore, next to a fireplace cooking fish on a stick. So that's a pretty interesting ending, especially for someone who is like this rich person. You get to find out all about her upbringing, growing up poor, and like how good she is at actually surviving from nothing. Like she has to be resourceful and has to be smart about a lot of the things she goes through, which is how she got to where she is, right?
Hmm. And this is like, it makes sense how Ningguang and Beidou have a very similar upbringing. So it makes sense why they would get along so well. I mean, they both like fish. They both came from fishing towns or fishing like areas. And yeah, then definitely you're very, very, what is it, frugal or thrifty or something? It's actually pretty fun how you can see how these characters are with their money and how similar they can be. But Beidou and Ningguang, they both have backgrounds in, I guess, negotiation tactics. You also have, just tr- trade. I mean, being good negotiators. So yeah, it really flushes the character out a little bit more. And it's also pretty humbling to know that a character like Ning Wang, who's pretty much the head of Leeway, had a beginning like this, origin story, just like anyone else. But it's an interesting parallel that Beto and Ning Wang had like very similar starting paths, but they diverged into like one became very prominent in the city, and did it the legitimate way, and then Beto went to the other the other path of the illegitimate, but still upright and just. So it's a fun little parallel between the characters.
Yeah, I love their dynamic, their whole thing. So let's rewind. Let's go back to time off. So how are we spending our day? So not from starting from zero, but let's do either working at the Northland Bank or working on the chess game.
I think the chess game, because I honestly don't remember how the chess game went, but I think I remember she had like pieces do really weird stuff, but I just didn't remember. I didn't remember what the rules were.
So okay, so for the chess game thing, it was actually she wanted to make a commemorative chess set for the Battle of Liyue, and so she was having a piece made of the Traveler, and so you have to go get your measurements taken, and you just talk about how Ningguang felt after smashing the jade chamber into the Oseal, the god, right? Like after that whole fight where she had to sacrifice the jade chamber, a lot of people felt that there were people that didn't like Ningguang before, right? Because even though she had the money and the influence, but maybe even because of that, they just felt like she was really selfish or that she had her best interests and money interests always in mind as a priority and not always Liyue. That's just how people felt, right? And so when she sacrificed the Jade Chamber, she found that a lot of people actually were more accepting of her because they saw, oh, she's not totally selfish. She does care enough to sacrifice something that means so much to her, and it kind of won her over for a lot with a lot of people. And so she tells the story to the girl who is making the chess piece about because they're also making a chess piece of the Jade Chamber. She tells the story in a way that says, "Oh yeah, I knew that smashing the Jade Chamber into the god was the best thing to do because in the long term it's better for Liyue because it's an investment and like saving Liyue was an investment and so she kind of makes up a reason that she did it. But then afterwards she talks to you in private and she says, I lied to her. I actually didn't think about that at all when that was happening. I just thought it was the right thing to do and I thought it was the only way for us to be able to overcome that situation. And so I just kind of acted without thinking ahead. And so but at the same time, even though that's how she really felt, she can't tell anyone that, except for the traveler, of course, because people have to see Ningguang as this confident, resourceful decision
The
maker.
image,
Yeah,
right?
and so that's really important.
So
But the only
she has to
person that
upkeep it.
knows how she feels about that whole situation, because she lost her, like she says, she lost her life partner, right? Like that Jade Chamber was like everything to her. And so that's another reason why everyone was like, "Oh wow, you sacrificed your life partner for the greater good of Liyue. You're a very respectable person." But she was depressed after that happened. She said,
It was
"So
impulsive. It was an
yeah,
emotional decision. You saw her in a slightly vulnerable state, but it's also like it's a bit of an eye opener. You learn a lot of these things about characters, and you you don't it even like breaks your assumptions about them because you they're put into these situations, and if you only read the headlines, if you only read the articles, you're gonna think, okay, this person just like that, and then you talk to the person themselves, and they say this is their thing. Oh wow, you completely have a different perspective. Ningguang is a very nuanced character. It's because she has the front, she has this position where she knows she has to behave a certain way, and then behind closed doors, completely different. Well, not completely, but still carries a bit of that personality with her. But then you see the motivations behind her decisions, like this one. Like yeah, she was very attached to the thing, but she had to still portray the official reason as, oh, it's more of an investment thing. She has to kind of still sound like the Liu Qixing. But yeah, it's funny how like a simple hangout quest like this provides so much important context and background to a character, where it feels like it's way more important than the event itself. So
Right.
it's still worth doing to understand all these people that you're playing with, all the people that you have in your groups. And I really wish they carried this more for this purely for the sake of storytelling. But I can honestly see why it's not a very popular thing because it's not very highly interactive as all the other game modes. It's not like an active like input buttons moving around like a lot of mechanics. It's just
It's
hitting
just story.
dialogue, understanding dialogue. It's a
Yeah,
story,
I
purely
think
story driven.
I still think that, us as appreciators of the story, and I think a lot of the people listening to this podcast also really appreciate the characters and the story and the world building that Genshin tries to do. What I think is that Hangouts need to be a little bit more front and center, actually. I know like we always have a little bit of hype around it when they announce it and when it comes out, but there's not people don't talk about it after that. There's no people that are going around talking about the things they know, except with some exceptions of like when we ask what's your favorite lore and all this stuff. The people that did the lore for these hangouts, I think that there's a lot of potential for this lore to be some people's favorite lore in the game. Like I really really enjoyed learning about Ningguang. Like I really thought not much about Ningguang before I did this yesterday. Like Ningguang, I knew about her what I knew about her from the Archon quest, but now I know so much more about her that it's really really cool to think about when I'm in Liyue, even like when I'm just in Liyue for any reason, or when I use Ningguang in a party or something. I'm like, oh, this is that character who went through all this, and it gives a different meaning to playing the character. And I think that Hangouts are like I mentioned before, they're kind of hidden. Like they're not really obvious to do. I feel like there
Not
should be
prominent or promoted.
yeah, and I think there should also be another. For example, I think there should be a reward where once you do all the endings, you can get like a different, like for example, a different name card or something like that, like something that shows that you did the Hangouts, because
Or how
that
about this?
that's more incentive, right?
How about this? If you did like all the hangouts for one particular character, you get like a special skin or a
Oh my
special
god,
outfit.
dude, that would be it. That would be like the incentive to do the
Because here's
Hangouts.
the thing: the when the first time, well, no, the second time the game introduced outfits. The first time was Barbara and
Right.
Jean during the summer event. Then during the Lantern Rite, or I think it was started later in the year, we had Ningguang
Ka-ching.
and Kajing. Ningguang's outfit appears in the Hangouts.
Yeah.
Like you do the Hangouts, you literally give her the dress,
We're not there yet, but yeah.
and then that
we're gonna
I
talk
know,
we're gonna
but I
talk about
just
that in
like
a second.
there's a tie-in
Yeah.
as far as if you're talking rewards or cosmetic rewards.
No, I think cosmetic rewards is the most incentive in this game, and I think the Hangouts would benefit so much more, and the character stories would benefit so much more if there was a 4-star outfit that was unlockable for these 4-star characters just from doing the Hangout. And it'd be cool if they incorporated the outfit into the Hangout, but I don't think it's necessary. Like you could just do the Hangout and get a totally different outfit. But it would be nice to have an outfit that is related to the story, the same way that Ningguang's is, which we will talk about in a second. So
Well, the reason why I put that is because I remember playing the Tales of Symphonia, Tales of Vesperia. The Tales games, they do this where your outfit that you get in the game is specifically because you did this side quest line around that one particular character. And like you can still do the same event, but in the event, if you pick a certain character, they will get the outfit for that little side quest event. And if you want it for all of the other ones, you gotta wait until you do your second playthrough of the game, and then you go that route and just picked a different character. So it's it made sense to me because the whole thing is focused around this one character. That any kind of reward would be focused on that character. Like I know you have the picture, I know you get like their specific cooking dish, but I thought this would actually be another clever way to introduce more cosmetic rewards.
yeah, I just think there should be some more of a permanent uh impactful reward after doing the hangout, because the hangouts largely go unnoticed and people don't do them. They feel like the rewards maybe isn't worth it. I know there are people that speed through it for the prima gems, like, and there'll always be people that speed through it, right? There'll always be people who don't really care about what it is about story. There are people that don't care about story. They just rush through the game so that they can fight stuff like that. That's like, a real demographic of people, and that's fine. But for all the work that they're putting in, and for the people that do appreciate the story, I think that the gap here is that there are people who do appreciate the story but don't see the incentive to do the story for the hangout and to understand it. So if we can create some kind of benefit, which I think that, like you're saying, to what you're saying, either like, honestly, like either even a 4-star weapon, like that's unique to the character after doing the hangout, but also like you said, a cosmetic in the same vein as Ningguang would be a really really cool way to encourage people to do the hangouts and to have something to show for it when they're playing with other people or showing off their game, for example. So okay, let's continue talking about the hangout, because this is I want to get to the part where we're talking about her costume. So the last
Mm-hmm.
option is on time off day, is we talked about the starting from zero, from nothing. We talked about doing the chess game, and then the third one was working at Northland Bank, which is the Sneznaya run bank in Liyue. I mean, they're in other nations too, but this is the one in Liyue. And so you go there, and Ningguang is kind of not sure whether she should take you there because she had some kind of incident there. And when you go there, you see the people, the employees, being really, really, how can I say this? They're like being really aggressive toward her and saying things like, "Oh, you're gonna come sue us again, or you're gonna do something like that." And apparently, she lost them a lot of money because I think because of Child, when he did,
Probably.
yeah, when he did that thing where he was trying to find Rex Lapis's body in the story, and that's when you do the Child fight, right? And you're fighting in the gold place where they make all the Mora, and like he caused a lot of damage and was considered damage, like, and Ningguang was able to pin that damage on Sneznaya and I guess the Fatui maybe, and then made Northland Bank pay for the damages. So they paid a lot of money to fix Liyue, and they were really mad about it. Like they were really upset about it. And so basically they were really aggressive toward her, and they thought she might be scheming to take more money from them. So as soon as you walk in there with Traveler, you were talking about, hey, we want to do some investments or whatever. And then she goes, no, get out of here. You're going to just sue us again or whatever. And then Ningguang goes, oh, I knew I shouldn't have taken you here. And then so you guys leave, and you find out that someone from Sneznaya is tailing you, like they're following you. And so
Mm-hmm.
you like, you're really suspicious, and then you have to find this person, you confront them, and then you find out that as soon as you
Don't you
left,
actually have to hide?
no, not really. You're just walking around, and you're walking around, and it says like, notice your
Okay.
surroundings, and you can keep seeing the same
Yeah.
dude moving around. He's like hiding all over the place.
Okay.
But you go up to the person, you talk to him, and he says, yeah, we actually like, we were ordered to follow you. There was like a bunch of them, like a bunch of them were following. So she's like, so he said, other people who are following probably just reported this. So you go back to the bank, and there's like a whole bunch of them like talking about, they're like reporting on your whereabouts, and they're like, oh, she's probably scheming something, blah blah blah. And then she goes, so there was some kind of something that was illegal about what they did, and so she's threatening to, again, like, hurt them financially, I guess. And there's no real conclusion. It actually just ends with that confrontation, and she's basically doing like a Phoenix Wright, like pointing her finger at them pose, and they're all like, ah, and then Travelers in the background like, whoa, like this is the ending picture, right? So it kind of
The
just ends
commanding
right there.
pose.
Yeah, it kind of ends right there. Like she's like accusing them of um, trickery. So yeah, it was a really interesting perspective, because I was wondering about that Sneznayan Bank and how, because there's no Sneznayan Bank in Mondstadt, right? At least not in the
It's
city.
just the embassy.
Yeah, and so this bank here in Liyue, and after all the stuff that happened with child being directly involved, I was wondering. A little bit of me was part of me was wondering about it a long time ago, and I didn't even think about it. And then now they have this, and I was like, oh dang! So they are spiteful of her from everything that happened. So pretty interesting. But you get to see Ningguang in her most aggressive state. Like this is where she's using everything that she knows about how to deal with people and confrontation and her financial knowledge and her status, and she's using it to directly confront these people who are basically threatening her for no reason. She's like, we just walked in without a scheme or anything. We just walked in to try to talk to them and to see how much money we can make or whatever. But we didn't even get to that far because they just started being aggressive toward us. And so that's why we left. And then they started doing this thing where they started having her tailed. And yeah, it was a really interesting thing. I definitely recommend checking it out. So yeah, do you remember this one? Like, do you have any thoughts about this one?
Not so much. I don't remember this one as much. I just remember them. I remember the tailing part, but I could have sworn there was a part where you had to like run away and actually stay out of line of sight.
Nah, there wasn't
Or
anything
was
like
that a
that.
different game?
No stealth mechanic.
I'm probably confusing. Yeah, I was probably confusing it with another game. But yeah, I just remember being. There's actually quite a few where you have to hide from people and you're being tailed and you have like
In the
these
Hangouts?
eyes. Yeah. Well, no. In the like, other game modes, like you have
Oh
something
yeah.
similar where you have to tail someone or you have
Right,
to like
right.
hide from someone.
Well, that's okay, Kai. Next Hangouts we do, there'll be ones you haven't done, or you can redo them or whatever, and then we can talk about it. But
Yeah.
okay, so let's do the so
The big rewind
yeah,
all
so
the way
let's
back to the beginning.
rewind back to the beginning. So instead of choosing our time off, we actually schedule her a proper schedule where she meets with clients and has to make business decisions. So the first the first thing on the schedule is to meet with a girl who won an auction for Ningguang's time, and people bid for Ningguang's time like a bunch of money, and she was able to have a lunch with her, and Ningguang invited the traveler because why not? And so the lady, there a bunch of stuff happens. There's a pretty funny conversation about like the traveler and Ningguang being more than friends, and there's like a rumor and all this stuff, which is pretty funny. But then from that conversation, there are two paths. One is there's actually an auctioning happening that day that Ningguang's assistants are meant to oversee, but Ningguang is worried about them. And you decide, do we want to go check on them, or do we want to just let them handle it and move on to the next thing on the schedule? So, Kahi, which one do you want to do? Do you want to check on them, or do you want to move on?
I guess we can check on it.
Okay, so let's check on what's happening with the auction. So we go to the auction, we actually participate in the auction a little bit, and the auction is actually for a bunch of really, really normal items. Like not special, not expensive, just really normal notebook and a vase and something else. And so the people in the auction were
Seemingly, I think, right?
no,
Seemingly no
they're
value.
no, they are no value. And so
Mm,
they're very
could have
minimal
there's
value.
one. Oh,
Okay,
I'm
so
thinking of a different item. So I'm thinking of the actual things that they fished up. Sorry.
right. Okay, so
Yeah.
they're these really normal items with no value, and basically because they are Ningguang's items, people are paying a ton of money to. They're auctioning off a ton of money for them. You actually get to participate in the auction a little bit, but there's a point where you have to back down, and this guy spends so much money on these things, and you participate in just the first one. And then after that, the auction concludes, and some of them buy stuff, some of them don't get to buy stuff. But then you find out that all of those people were actually handpicked to join that auction for a specific reason. You find out that those people all stole Ningguang's stuff when the Jade Chamber crashed into the ocean.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
That I remember this because the actual items they seemed like they weren't the valuable, but they were actually from the J Chamber.
No. The those items were normal items,
Hmm?
and the only reason that they were bidding on it so much is because they thought that they could
Mm.
get Ningguang's items and sell them for a ton of money because that's what they already did for the Jade Chamber stuff. So those
Okay,
items
so like I'm right, but not about these items. So they
so so
already did that part. Okay.
so what happened is they these people fished up items from, or these people bought items that were fished up slash stolen from the Jade Chamber when it fell. Even though when the Jade Chamber fell, Ningguang sent an evaluation party to get all her stuff back, not everything was recovered. And they were able to track down a lot of those things, but they weren't able to track down properly the ownership of a lot of those items, even though she knew they were hers, because they had already changed hands so many times. They said that the things that were picked up from the ocean were like sold on the markets and black markets and all this stuff. And so she found out that those people that were invited to the auction that day, she knew that they all possessed something of hers and that they were all trying to sell it for more money to like make a profit. And she said even with Yanfei's help, it would be too much legal trouble to prove that it's her items. So, and of course she could buy it back, but that's about the principle of not buying back your thing for more money. So she brought them to here to teach them a lesson. And so she basically just put really normal items up on sale so that they would spend a ton of money on them because they all think that Ningguang stuff is super valuable. And like at first it was like their reasoning for buying stuff was, oh, we really believe in you, Ningguang, so all your stuff must be valuable. But actually it's not valuable. And so they were like, hey, is this stuff fake? And they're like, no, this is just really normal stuff. There's nothing special about it. You just spend a ton of money on it. And they're like, hey, this is an outrage. And she goes, well, I know that you guys have my stuff. So here's the deal. I will not make you pay for this random items that you paid a ton of money for, that you already promised to pay for in the auction. I will give you your money back if you give me my stuff back. This was her plan, was to make them spend a bunch of money on useless items so that she could buy back her, or she could trade it back for her stuff without having her actually spend any money and without them actually spending any money. She basically just forced them to give it back. Like tricked them into giving it back. Yeah, so it was really good. So this was actually supposed to be planned by the assistants. Like the assistants were supposed to do this, but you end up checking on them and Ningguang does it herself. So it was super interesting.
Are you talking about those three people? Those three girls?
Yeah, they all look the same. Mm-hmm. They're also very passionate about their work. So yeah, so that was that ending, and then the ending, you get back she gets back one of her items, and she's kind of looking at it in the picture, and the traveler is just like, "Oh, Ningguang is so cute."
So
I don't
cool.
know. Yeah,
so cool.
Yeah,
the
just
outfit
like,
is great too, by the way.
Oh, duh! Oh my god, I totally forgot to mention that. Okay, so at the beginning of this, when you say, "Oh, let's do a proper schedule today, where you're gonna meet clients,"
yeah.
At the very beginning, the first thing you have to do before you go on that lunch with that random girl is you have to get her a custom-made outfit, and it's this outfit that was released at the same time as this hangout, right? So
the free one.
Yeah, the free one during that time. So it was really, really good. Like the color is totally different and everything.
Blue.
I think Kaching's outfit
wear.
Is so close to her original outfit that sometimes I forget that it's not her original outfit. Yeah, but Ningguang's outfit is great because it's blue, and it's funny because like during one of the scenes where you're walking with her next to her with her normal outfit, I switched into Ningguang with the custom outfit so I could see them walking next to each other. So that was pretty funny. So you go to, let's rewind. So you didn't go to the auction. You decided, you know what, let's just let the assistants handle it. And let's go to our next item for today, which is going to be the last ending, which is meeting with your informants. And so you find out that Ningguang's informants are those 3 little kids in Liyue Harbor.
That was hilarious.
Yeah.
That was hilarious. I was shocked that those were the informants.
It's so good.
Because you see them a lot during the daily commissions.
Yeah.
And they're kind of, I don't want to say they're annoying, but just for some reason you think they're not important. But then suddenly they are the ones that's giving Ningguang all of this background information. That's how she makes her decisions.
It also makes sense to me because, remember that daily commission where you have to count how many ships are going into the harbor, and you have to ask those kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay, so that's why they know. Like they're smart. They've been trained by Ningguang. And so, yeah, you meet the 3 little kids. You find out that one of the little kids was trying to feed you false intelligence because she was basically threatened by these 2 guys who lost a lot of money, and they're trying to trick Ningguang into thinking that this non-profitable business is going to become profitable, or this unprofitable business is going to become profitable. And Ningguang knows immediately because she had already had the situation looked into. She knew something was wrong when the kid told her that. So, and the kid was also very nervous and not acting like normal. So, when you find out like that those guys were basically manipulating this kid, you find those guys and then threaten them basically to either like actually so what happens is Ningguang finds these guys and then she makes them a deal. She either says, "I will buy all of your unprofitable, unused stock off of you if you do, something for me, basically." And it's either that or you keep it and you lose a bunch of money for a lot. You basically have to work for Ningguang, and if you don't, then you have to deal with your massive amount of debt that you've accumulated. So the guys decided, you
I'm
know what,
trying
we
to
don't have a
figure out what is the
choice.
things. I'm
What?
trying to figure out what they were trying to sell. Is it like materials, like wood or
So
something?
what they were trying to sell was the what's it called? The stone, like it's I think it's the stone that
Stones?
glows. Yeah, like the
The jadeite?
something jadeite or
Like a low grade
no, it
jadeite
it
or
was like
something?
there was like supposed to be like a Fontaine scholar that was gonna come to Liyue and appraise a bunch of, I think it's the luminous stone thing. So
Is that, but
yeah,
not the
it's
ones that they use for the jade chamber, right?
no, I don't think so. It's really
Different.
specific, but
Okay.
it doesn't matter. You never see it, you never interact with it. It's just like that was their reasoning, was that they invested a bunch in something that they heard was going to be lucrative, and it ended up being false information or just never coming true. So they had a bunch of stock of something they didn't need that nobody wanted to buy, and so they made an investment mistake, right? And Ningguang was like, "Wow, making an investment mistake like that is not a sob story. Like, I can't feel bad for you. You made a bad business decision. You put all your eggs in one basket, basically, and now you're in trouble." And so she was helping them by offering to buy their stuff off of them. So basically, they have to work for her and do a bunch of hard work, or else they basically make zero profit for a long time because they have to everything they work they have to give to her, but otherwise they have to, they're just super in debt and they have to get rid of all their stuff and pay it back really fast. And so that is why Ningguang offers it to them, this way out basically. And so in exchange for buying out their stuff, they have to, their first job is to play hide and seek with the kids. So you go to different part of Liyue Harbor, and the ending picture is the kids running away from the two guys, and Ningguang and Traveler are just there in the background. So, and by the way, of course, all these pictures have like a Lumine version and an Aether version. So, yeah. So that's it. That's what happens, and I think it was really interesting to see this part because there are people that are just trying to straight up use Ningguang's talents or status against her in like really sneaky ways, as far as like manipulating a poor little kid. Even though they know that these kids are Ningguang's informants, they the way that they did it, I don't know. I didn't want to explain the whole thing, but I guess I'll just explain. Is like there was something that Ningguang was like, this little girl's mom gave her a comb, and then the comb broke and it was really special to her, so Ningguang was having it repaired, and the guy told her, Ningguang forgot about the comb. Here, take this comb, and then tell Ningguang this in, something false information. And so the little girl was like believing what the guy said, and she basically thought Ningguang didn't care about her and all this stuff. And so she basically, these two guys put her in emotional turmoil to get to get what they wanted. And Ningguang of course hated that, and of course it's a terrible thing to do. So because of that, you get to see how far people will go to try to manipulate Ningguang's understanding of the market to get what they want, as to go so far as to like mess with this little kid or whatever. So anyway, it was a definitely a different side of Ningguang's like issues that she has to deal with, where people are trying to get what they want out of her, because of course there are many people trying to get what they want out of her, but how far they're willing to go to do it and what kinds of people are doing it, you kind of get a glimpse into that with this last ending. So yeah, what do you think of
Nice. You know what?
The Ningguang hangout, Kahi?
Well, Ningguang, I think I kind of like. I kind of like Beto's one because of you learn more of her origins. You learn how she deals with all of her work, how she does her, I guess, her pirating duties. But it's Ningguang is pretty much the same. There's a lot of parallels between how Beidou and Ningguang and how their stories kind of progress, because you kind of see with their work ethic, you see their personal motivations, you see their emotional decision making, and just how they carry themselves in public as well as in private. It's just it flushes out all the perspectives of the character that you cannot see through the main story, because they all have to act in the context of the ongoing narrative for the entire game. So you don't really get a focus just on them. They just have to react to you. They have to react to everything else and all the other story bits. So this one, when you get to have a story that's centered around them, you actually can get sometimes even a better story, something that can take its time, something that can have good dialogue, something that just helps draw more connections to the world around them too, which is nice. This last one about the informants, I thought, I wonder if, I wonder if Yelan does the same thing. If she has like her own little informants, or if Yelan works more closely with Ningguang or something. Because
Well,
we were talking
supposedly
about
she
it
does,
another.
right?
Yeah. I just forget to what extent. Because
Well, I
Yelan
remember
is
she
herself like an
mentioned in her
informant.
story, yeah, that she works directly with Ningguang a lot.
Oh, she does. Okay, maybe I
Yeah,
just didn't. Maybe it's because I didn't see them in the same room planning something. Maybe just doesn't hit
yeah.
as much.
I feel like if there's Ningguang Hangout too, Yanlan might be in it. Like there's I also think
Probably.
there's no reason that 5 stars couldn't show up in these hangouts. Like hangouts have been exclusively for 4 stars so far, and then 5 stars get like a whole story quest. But like for example, if Sucrose got a hangout, wait, does Sucrose have a hangout?
Nope.
No, okay. So like if Sucrose got to hang out, maybe like Albedo shows up or something like that, right?
Would be
Noel,
nice.
Ningguang gets to hang out. So Yelan shows
Noelle
up.
got two whole chapters, like two
You know,
whole like acts.
yeah. So I mean,
I mean, Noelle was like the first 4 star.
Noel was the first 4 star. Or there was
Yeah. Oh
four
no, no, Amber
characters.
was, but she was the first 4 star you could summon.
Right, right. Well, we'll see how I like. Here's the thing. We talked about in the last podcast that hangouts don't seem to be that popular. No one really talks about them. We don't really know what direction they take because we don't know if the reason that they don't have more hangouts is because of demand or if it's because it actually takes a long time to make these. But I'm hoping that it's just because they take a long time to make them. I hope that
Well, with the
we
voice acting and all.
right. Well, I just hope that there's no intention of slowing down making this kind of content, right? Because I think this is a really cool way to experience this game story, and there's so much potential in this hangout. Because I mean, I personally like visual novel esque decision making trees like this. So for me, it's really great. But I also think it's a really unique way for you to take control of experiencing the story a little bit, and it fleshes out the world more. So yeah, I don't know. I really like the system, and I really hope that it just improves and that they do more of them. But I think at the same time that people don't talk about them and that they're not front and center and there's not enough rewards associated with doing these hangouts to give people more incentive to actually discuss and to experience the story. Like I said, a lot of people will skip through it. So yeah, so I'm curious what hangouts will be like in the future. I hope we get lots more. I hope we get some Sumeru hangouts pretty soon. I really want a Candace hangout. So we'll see where that goes in the future. Oh, I would love a Candace and a Farzan hangout. Yeah. Oh my god, a Farzan hangout would be insane. I'm just thinking about that.
Because you have that whole space in the academia that's not really used all that much.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could have the whole hangout in there. As Candace, you can like, go to another part of the desert or like just hang out in the Aru village again.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's these spaces that you can go to that aren't really utilized at all, and then a hangout can occur there. Or like you could have. I just had a thought like of somehow integrating like hangouts with TCG, because you're literally just hanging out with the character, playing a game.
Yeah,
Maybe it
why
could
not?
just be some extra dialogue. Like you get them down to like a certain health, they start to have some voice lines activated, or like you reach like a certain midpoint, and then there's like a small cutscene, and you can kind of see like you're talking with them on the table and then you go right back to playing the game. I don't know, maybe just something like that.
Yeah, so I mean, as an example, right? Guys, that wraps up our Hangout episode. And finally, we did something with Hangouts. I really wanted to do Hangouts for a while.
Finally.
Doing this episode is the incentive enough for me to do the Hangouts. But I really, really enjoyed doing them. Like I said, it only takes about an hour to finish all the story paths in one Hangout. So if you want to break up the monotony a little bit with your story quests or running around the world, then check out a Hangout, especially for a character that you like or maybe you don't like. Maybe it's actually better to do a Hangout for a character you don't have any interest in so that you can get some interest in that character. I think that's a really important thing to think about because Hangouts build more on just the character, but also the world around the character and the game's world in general. So if you're interested in story, learning more about the story, definitely look it up. There's a lot of things that you can't find out otherwise without doing the Hangout. So that being said, this week's community discussion question is going to be, what kind of new way to experience story content would you like to see in the game? So I'm going to say like maybe not counting the ability to rewatch story cutscenes. I think everybody wants that. That's like, I don't think that's experiencing new story content, but for example, like we said, similar to Hangouts, maybe there's like TCG story, or maybe there's some other kind of way that you have in mind. So let us know, and we will think about it also and share with you in our next episode. My next episode, I'll already be in Vancouver, Canada, so should be pretty interesting. But all right, Kahi, you have any last closing comments on Hangouts?
If anything, they're just fun to do so you can listen to them, understand the character. If you have a favorite character, of course you're going to do their Hangout first. But take your time. Maybe even take a little note, because one thing that they mentioned in a Hangout may have been a big hint of something happening later on in the future. Who knows? But it's actually really good, especially for people who love lore. They're going to really love this. So yeah, take your time and enjoy the pictures.
Great. And let us know what you thought. Let us know the answer to your community question in the Discord, or tweet at us, or Spotify, or whatever you're using. Let us know. So everyone, thank you so much. That wraps up the show for today. As always, thanks for listening. And if you have the time, please leave us a comment and a review. We'd really appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening. Follow us on Twitter, once again, at Genshin Guys Pod. Me on Twitter at JSideGaming, Kahi at KAHIYAO. wait, YAO, Kahiao. And yeah, so everybody, follow us on the Discord, follow my Twitch, twitch.tv/JSide, and we'll see you soon. Also, as always,
Add Astra, add the sauce.
Hoshitoshi o mezase!
Enjoy.